My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, as we hear the breaking news last night from Ryan Garcia live on Jimmy Fallon Show announcing he's going to be fighting September 12th against Conor Benn in Las Vegas, the first thing that I thought of was, how is this going to work between Conor Benn, who's a Zuffa boxer, signed to Zuffa, and Ryan Garcia, who signed to Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions, the WBC welterweight champion of the world, ran by Mauricio Solomon, who has been called the worst names, the most disrespectful comments out there by Dana White. And so has Oscar De La Hoya, another ex-fighter, ex-world champion, legend, CEO of Golden Boy Promotions, ex-Ring Magazine owner. Dana White says the same exact thing about Oscar De La Hoya. Nothing but disrespect. And De La Hoya, a man who was fighting to keep the Muhammad Ali Act in place, trying to not let the Revival Act get passed by TKO and Dana White, Sella, Turkey, and these guys. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Garcia announced that he's going to be fighting Conor Benn, which means Oscar De La Hoya is complying and working with Zuffa Boxing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's made contact with Dana White or anything like that. Or that doesn't mean we're going to see Oscar De La Hoya with Dana White at a press conference or at the goddamn weigh-ins or at the goddamn fight. Who knows? We just had a Tyson Fury versus Arslanbek Mahmudov. Conor Benn go up against Regis Prograis. And Dana White was nowhere to be found. So Oscar De La Hoya, a couple months back, was very vocal and releasing tweets out there saying, releasing Instagram stories, saying, Conor Benn, you went out there on this huge old media tour talking about wanting to fight against Ryan Garcia. But how do you expect to do that when you're signed to Zuffa Boxing, who only lets you fight for their unicorn bout, says Oscar De La Hoya. Well, it seems like that's not what's going down in Zuffa Boxing. Yes, they have their Zuffa numbered events. Yes, they have their roster. Yes, they have two different types of events. One, which is the Zuffa numbered events. And two, Ring Magazine events. Turkey al-Sheikh events. So, you got two routes, two avenues here with Zuffa Boxing. You could be like some of these up-and-coming boxers who weren't really getting the clout that they wanted to get or the respect that they should have got from other boxing promoters. Of course, boxing promoters have to pick and choose. Right? They have a home for them, a destination for them, and a destination for the world champions out there with world title bouts. Now, this doesn't mean that the sanctioning bodies are going to comply when a Zuffa world title's on the line, because we've seen what happened with Jaya Pataya. But this route of where champions can now be signed, Zuffa's allowing guys like Conor Benn to fight for the WBC welterweight title. They are allowing their boxers to fight not only for the unicorn bout that Oscar De La Hoya speaks, but for the other world titles. That's what they wanted to do with Jaya Pataya before the IBF decided to strip him. So, Oscar De La Hoya, and by the way, you know, this isn't a clap back to Oscar De La Hoya or nothing like that. I actually like the progression that we're seeing from this guy. I like the growth. You know, this was a man who was absolutely belittling Zuffa Boxing to going and fighting for the Muhammad Ali Act, to speaking about being for the fighters. A guy who has turned down Ryan Garcia opportunities in fights that he wanted to compete in. But based off of contract, Oscar De La Hoya didn't let him compete in those. He now really does seem like he's for the fighter. As if Ryan Garcia wants to fight Conor Benn, I have no choice but to comply.
How does that fight happen?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because Zuffa Boxing is saying bluntly, we are not going to recognize any sanctioning bodies. We are not going to work with anybody in boxing. We're going to play in our own sandbox. Then how are you going to allow Conor Benn to fight for the WBC world title against Ryan Garcia? Look, ultimately it's up to the fighter, and that's the way we work. I work for the fighter. Ultimately, if that's the fight Ryan wants, then we're gonna have to evaluate. We're gonna have to sit down and negotiate. And if that's the fight Ryan wants, then we have to make it. You know, I'm for the fighter 1,000%. But it's gonna be very interesting. Imagine me and Dana White negotiating, or being in the same room for that matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, so shout out to Oscar De La Hoya for putting his differences to the side. This announcement that Conor Benn is next basically confirms all that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it seems like De La Hoya is ready to comply. And now, I think based off of this move, we're going to see a lot more movement when it comes to the sanctioning bodies complying with Zuffa boxers, but not necessarily in Zuffa numbered events, but in Zuffa boxers competing outside of the numbered events in Ring Magazine cards. It's absolutely great news, man, and it's breaking news. That's the first thing that came to my head as I seen this fight get announced. Of course, I thought, dude, I can't wait to see Oscar De La Hoya and Dana White together, but we know for a fact that's probably not going to happen, as Dana White wasn't at the press conference for Tyson Fury and Arsen Bekmambetov, neither at the fight. It's a lot different than the Zuffa numbered events press conferences, right? Where he goes, stands in the middle, and has his media ask questions to the fighter sitting up on top. It's a lot different than the way they run things like that. But my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think. Oscar De La Hoya, Ryan Garcia officially going to be complying with a Zuffa boxer. And I believe Ryan's not going to be getting stripped. I believe as long as the Zuffa world title's not on the line, he ain't getting stripped. Let me know what you guys think. This is game-changing, and this is history in boxing being made before our eyes. Let me know what you guys think. I'm out.